This is a Heart and Hand production.
Hello and welcome back to Tactics Talk. I'm your host, Adam Thornton. Things are going very well in the world of Rangers right now. Lots of interesting things happening with tactical setup. There's been some really good performances. We've got a few new players in to have a look at, so we thought it was time to get back on the old tactics wagon and see what myself and Ali have made of the last few weeks. So, spoiler alert, joining me, we've got Ali Bain. Ali, how's things?
Good, thanks, mate. As you said, lots going on, lots of positivity. Everybody's buzzing about the team, which is good again. And it's a lovely little thing when the team's winning and we get to talk about the team playing well. That's always a good thing.
Yeah, we'll see how long it lasts. But yes, that certainly is the case right now. So just a little bit of an agenda on this one. We're going to have a chat first of all about the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the pitch. So there's been a few really interesting points recently with obviously Barisic coming back in at the weekend there and Redvan Yilmaz coming in midweek behind the same winger, I should say, in Rabbi Matondo. So there's a really good chance there, I think, to see how those interactions play out, how they correspond with each other, maybe how they haven't worked as well together. And then on the other side, we've now got quite a body of evidence on the whole Tavernier and Ross McCausland piece. I guess that's probably the longest run that a right winger has had in the team ahead of Tavernier, probably since Candace. I know everyone likes to mention Candace, but probably since that point. So it's a decent body there to have a chat through. We are doing this on Tactical Pad, so this segment will be available on YouTube. Obviously, because you're also listening to it on Patreon, it is here now as well. If you would like to see it on YouTube as well while you're listening, then go over there. The second half of the podcast will just be a podcast, but we thought it'd be good to illustrate this on YouTube as well. Okay, Ali. So as I said, in the Livingston game, Borna Barisic started as the left back, and he played ahead of Rabbi Matondo. What were your initial thoughts about how that worked? I guess particularly during the first half before we started all the substitutions.
Okay, I guess is probably the fair enough phrase. There's some decent periods of play. I think when we talk about the starting positions, obviously when you've got two players on the flanks like this, you're not necessarily going to have one of them moving in and one of them moving out until the ball arrives in that area, right? So if we, again, try and use our mind's eye here to say, right, well, let's say the ball's been switched from Tavernier across the field and it's worked its way across to the fullback. At what point now does the actions and movements of those wide players start to take effect, right? So ideally what you'd want is that large sort of outside area from the edge of the 18 to the sideline, that wing area, is that you wouldn't want both players almost exclusively occupying that area. They just become easy to mark. They're harder to play passes with each other. We reduce the amount of space we've got in order to do those, just off-ball attacking runs, support movements underneath. So I think when you look at the play style of Barisic, he wants to get forward, he wants to be involved, but it's in a very specific area, right? It's typically in the overlap. It's in positions where he's comfortable crossing the ball and he's got enough space on the outside of him because his crossing technique is from left to right. It's a whipped cross. So he's not so comfortable coming on the inside and driving it with his laces or sort of clipping it to the back post. So with that being the case and Matondo starting wider, I felt there was a little bit of conflict there as to how both of them sort of jive together, really.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there was a couple of moments in that first half there where it just felt like they were maybe a little bit static, maybe not offering as much variation. I'm interested in something that was, I think, mentioned at the time, but I've only really just picked up on it, was during the first half, the manager was spending a lot of time talking to Matondo in terms of where he wanted him to go and what he wanted him to do. So I wonder if there was maybe that the manager was sort of sensing that as well, because obviously I think when Matondo cuts in and scores that goal, the manager then sort of makes a reaction, as in, I've told you, you can, I've kind of, that's what I want to hear from you, or that's what I want to see from you. And I think that's a thing. We know what Barisic does. We know what he's going to give us. He's not going to give us a whole lot of variation. So it's, I guess, the responsibility of Matondo there to continue to cut in there. What have you made of Matondo? I mean, I feel like we're at the stage now where we know what we're going to get with him, and we know what we're not going to get. But that's, I guess, his last 4 games. He won the penalty against Dumbarton. I think he got an assist against Hibs, and then he's got 2 goals in his last 2 games. So at a time when we don't have huge amounts of attacking options, he's certainly coming up with the goods, albeit just a pretty small sample size so far.
Yeah, his dribbling style's awkward because it's lots of small touches, right? So it can draw fouls, it can pull players towards the ball. I don't necessarily think it's a dribbling style that lends itself to, certainly in the case of Barisic, making overlapping runs and then him able to play with others. I think if he dribbles, it usually results in a shot, right? And that's fine. That's okay. I just think we now need to understand that, okay, well, the striker now can't play in that inside lane. It's pointless Dessers going over to his side and playing give and goes, for example. It's pointless a midfielder coming and receiving on the inside and playing back down the line because he wants to dribble diagonally. So with that being the case now, I think the players around about him have probably figured that out, right? So how do you set him up for success? I think the part where he needs to probably pay his teammates back is it's just quality. The amount of times that we're seeing him dribble the ball at the field, or the defender will get a nick off him and it will go out for a goal kick. Like, those are instances that high-level wingers don't let themselves get into, and it's just because they've got a better protection of the ball. Doesn't mean that he's not a good dribbler, doesn't mean he's not talented, but when your only output really is, beat a man, get to the end line and square it or shoot, then I think it becomes a little predictable after a while. And that's my sort of bigger concern, I guess, is that, if we're asking everyone to go out the way to create this 1 versus 1 all the time, and he's not delivering, then players get frustrated and they want to go get the ball off him.
And that's what I was going to say. So I've sort of illustrated here, I guess, what you mean. So assuming that, I guess, Ravi Matondo has the ball, we would ordinarily see this ball is not working. Let's just pretend there's a ball there. So we would ordinarily see Ravi Matondo with the ball here, or a winger. So Sima, for example, with the ball here, and then you'd see the left-sided central midfielder and the number 9. In this case, Dessers and Lundstrom. We would see them sort of bunching up here for quick combination play. But I guess what you're saying there then is Matondo is wanting to come in to this area anyway, isn't he? So it's not going to he's not going to impact, or he's going to get in their way, I think. So what we then need to do, I guess, is give him that space, and he's not he's making a decent effort of it because he literally scored his goal by doing that. But I think you're right, it's the consistency piece there as well that he probably needs to get a little bit better at it. What about Redvan then? So if we bring him into the team, we've sort of mentioned there, I guess, how Barisic sort of approaches things. Redvan is a completely different style of fullback, and I think at the weekend we seen exactly what. Not at the weekend, sorry, at midweek we seen exactly what he can do. I thought that first sort of 40 minutes or so we were really, really great. They offered a really nice balance. I think you had Lundstrom sort of vacating that area and he was popping up a little bit more. You had Dessers maybe had a little bit centrally, but then you had Matondo in the half space, absolutely, and Redvan bombing on. He got to the byline more times, I think, in the first half than a Rangers fullback has in about 3 years. He does that really well, and I think that's the benefit I see of Yilmaz, is he can do that absolutely up and down. But then also, like you mentioned, if it's Matondo coming out, or even a few times in that first half, I seen John Lundstrom over here. Redvan can then come in here as well, and again there was another opportunity where he picks the ball up here, cuts it back I can't think who it was, but cuts it back there, and it should have been a pretty straightforward goal. I think it might have been Dessers that was on the end of it. So, what are your thoughts on that relationship there? Is that feels a bit better suited, but I'm not sure if it's just because of the flexibility of Redvan rather than how they play together.
Yeah, so go back a step then, mate. If you can put Lundstrom just at a second where Yilmaz is there, move Yilmaz to the halfway line, for example, right, and then move Matondo in a little bit. So what we're starting to see a lot now is Lundstrom, and so we'll go back a step here with the midfield. They're not as pinned to one side all the time as maybe what they were under Beale. I think Clement's giving them freedom to basically pick up a side or pick up a role, which, based on where the ball is. So what that's now allowing is that with that extra freedom, Yilmaz to go forward and attack either the inside or the outside. So in this instance, we've got him attacking the wings. Is that Lundstrom and ball progression is there to feed him, right? So the ball's not naturally switching from Lawrence or Goldson here directly to Yilmaz as we're building it. I know we're playing those diagonal balls a lot to the attackers, but as we're progressing the ball, we're allowing Yilmaz to get forward and Lundstrom's doing the building for him. So what that now allows him to do is to get in an attacking position so he can now, when he receives it, make a quick attacking pass or make an attacking move. I think under Beale a lot of the times, or even at early parts of Clement, Yilmaz was receiving the ball in our defensive third. And I think he was maybe getting himself, and Barisic for sure is guilty of this, is overthinking play, that they're having to go back, they're having to move the ball. Whereas if you just take your fullback out of that zone, right, out of the build completely and just put a midfielder in his spot, then naturally now you've just got a better passer of the ball, right? You've got someone who just can, move it into the final third a bit quicker. So now that once Yilmaz receives it in the opposition's half, this is where you're starting to see his skill set come in. So again, on the outside, a better 1v1 dribbler, right? He can now find those little round the corner passes for Matondo making the inside runs or strikers making the inside runs. Or conversely, if you move Matondo to the wing for his mate and Yilmaz on the inside, right, is that he can now play the ball wide and then make an attacking box run and still, again, able to contribute in the final third like a regular attacker would, right? Like a winger or a sort of midfield player would. So I think that's the beauty of him, is that he gives you both channels, whereas we know Barisic really only gives you one, right? So you're getting sort of double bubble there for the same position.
Absolutely. One thing I would like to see a little bit more of, I think, and I guess it's a relationship thing. I mean, that's probably the first time they've started a game together. For example, maybe the St Mirren game in the league anyway. So we'll have to wait and see. I guess how it all transpires. But one thing I'd be quite interested to see, particularly in the type of game that we've seen at the weekend, the Livingston game, where teams are going to sort of sit in a little bit. I would like to see Matondo just looking a little bit more, I guess, to receive this ball back to goal from Yilmaz or from Lundstrom, and then just do a little bit of a give and go. So either give the ball back to Lundstrom and Redvan, and then peel round and try and get that ball through. It feels like he plays in quite a binary way as well. Like we said, he probably tries to go on the outside, but he doesn't try to go on the outside as much as he tries to cut in. And I think it can be a little bit more one-dimensional. So I would like to see a little bit more of that, just those quick combinations to get them through. And maybe as the weeks progress and we see Diomande maybe or Raskin or even more of Lawrence in central midfield, maybe those are the type of passes that they can then get through. That maybe it's not something that Lundstrom does. But I think that would be another additional benefit I would really like, because that gets him on his heels, gets him round the back, and he's able to then hone in and go and get a cut back on, which is what we're all after, I think. That's, I guess, the in possession piece, but I want to talk about out of possession a little bit here, because I noticed something interesting, and it probably feeds into then talking about the right hand side of the pitch. So if we were to say we've got Tav up here on the ball, and we've got the defensive phase for the team in red, who are Aberdeen as things stand. But there's an interesting thing I noticed happening was when they've got the ball over here, and you know how this sort of works. We get the ball there, we do quite a lot of our work there. Either goes to McCausland, who tries to cut inside, it maybe goes back the way to Lawrence, and we try and work our way through nice little combination plays. When the ball is up here, I've noticed Redvan here
Right.
quite a bit. So at the front of the box, maybe still in the sort of left half space, but at the front of the box, not involved in the play, obviously, but with all due respect, I'm not exactly sure he's making a back post run to get a header on it if the ball comes in from Tavernier, because that's not going to be something that he's going to excel at. But what I was wondering, and I've not really seen it in action yet, but in your opinion, is that to then look at stopping transitions? Because ordinarily you would have Redvan, probably if they're not involved, he'd be kicking about here. If the ball moves to Dessers and then they lose the ball, then there's a breakaway on here that can just go right through there. But is that something new, first of all? Is it something you've noticed? Redvan being sort of narrower there helps, I guess, to cut those off. And I guess at the very basic level, he can run back quicker because there's less distance to cover when you're running in a straight line like that. So is that something that we think is new, or is it something else?
No, listen, I think it's a good spot. I think, again, you get your 2 for 1, like you said. In possession, it's an extra player that can switch the point of attack, right? You're not having to go from Tavernier all the way across the Matondo. You've got more people, right, that can potentially break the lines. But again, conversely, you have to think of what we're up against, right? And usually, if it's a back five, the opposition's wing back isn't getting forward in transition. It's the interior midfielder of a 4 that's started narrow. So you just, again, give yourself that wee bit more protection. So I think that's a good spot that he's recovering centrally. Because, again, let's be honest, if he was standing out in the wing there, you know, you're I think even just in possession, you're not going to get much out of him in those positions. So, no, I think it's a valid spot. I'd also say as well, though, as we've started to see now, what game would it have been? It was in the Hibs game. So as the ball switches across and he's making, again, runs in behind the defensive line, that's a good position to start from, right? That inside position, even if you are overlapping, because it's, you know, how do you mark that? Are you going to drop off and follow him and pick him up at the other side, you know? So I think you ask questions. Basically, it's saying to the opposition, if you're going to defend narrow, we're going to have attackers narrow next to you. So, like you said, to encounter pressure, but also just gives you that extra body to switch the ball.
Definitely. And the reason that I think, I mean, it's obviously I've only noticed it in the last 2 games, probably, to be honest, but the reason I think it's a ploy is the same thing happens on the other side. It's a little bit different with Tavernier because we do see him in the box quite a lot, more often than anyone else. But yeah, I noticed there was a few clips where he's sort of kicking about here against Livingston. And absolutely that could be with Tavernier, an opportunity when a ball comes in, he can get his head on it, or he's having a dig from sort of this distance. But then I guess if you're in here as not a starting position, but if you're in here as a far side fullback, then absolutely you can cover back out the way as well. So it's definitely one for us to have a bit of a look at. Okay, so let's flip sides then, if we can, and let's talk about the right hand side. So Ross McCausland is getting a lot of attention just now. I think there's been people that are critical of him at this stage, probably unfairly, I think, in most people's opinion. But then obviously the way that everything is just now, lots of people just then go the other way and become mega positive about his contribution. I think I definitely err more on the side of he's been very positive, but I do think there are bits of his game that he can work on. And to be fair, he does look to be working on. His decision making can be an issue at times, but we've seen at the weekend. Lovely ball in for Cantwell on one touch, give and go, fantastic ball back into the box for him to score. His out of possession play, I think, is really much improved. I've seen that against Livingston, running right back into where we want him to be. When Tavernier get caught on the ball up in the top right of the pitch, and then against Aberdeen as well, I just noticed just sort of scanning and checking that people are where he wants them to be and sort of moving out of possession. So it's not great, but it's a far cry away from Betis, where he got passed around by, I think, for both goals over there. So I think he's improving on that side. What are your thoughts on how he's done so far? And then we'll have a chat about that relationship with Tavernier.
So I guess his starting position, similar to Matondo, naturally wants to be wide, right? If we just set up a team tomorrow and went, right, Ross, where do you want to get the ball? I think he would feel comfortable receiving it wide and then attacking the space centrally. Where I think maybe the sort of, work with the manager is that if you just start 5 yards further inside, right, two things can happen. The first being you initiate pressure differently, right? So who presses him now? Is it a midfielder? Is it a fullback? Is it a centre back coming towards the ball? So whoever then jumps to the ball allows the support players around him to make a next action. So again, if it is the fullback, as you've showed there, Tavernier can overlap. If a midfielder comes to the ball, he's now got Cantwell, Lawrence, or Dessers he can find. I think what I like about McCausland is it's the split passes he's starting to play now. There's a lot more penetration. He's passing at the box. There's Cantwell making runs. So it's a different entry than a right-footed left winger in Matondo that really's only got the shot coming in. Yes, McCausland can shoot on his left side, right, as we saw the other night, but he's not naturally left-sided. So it's a different way to attack. If you were to, think of how he dribbles, it's usually almost like horizontally, right? It's like across the field, right? So again, we're drawing players towards the ball and opening up spaces. So I think this lad's skill set, we've saw probably 25 to 30% of what he's capable of right now. I still don't think we're fully aware of what he's got, because he's still, within the first 100 games of your career, where really that's critical to who you are as a player. And it's okay us being critical of individual performances, right? That's normal in football. And listen, that comes with the territory. He will be, right, as his peers will and the manager will. But as you look at his progression as a player, I think what we're seeing now is a guy who's figured out, this is what I'm good at. And the manager says, okay, well, I'm going to put you in positions where what you're good at can help everyone around us. And that's the sign of a good relationship for me.
I think so too. And I think when we get a little bit more mobility again from the midfield, Diomande can come in and cover the ground. We might even see Cortez playing a little bit centrally. Fabio Silva, who we're going to come on to, obviously channel runs a lot more than Dessers does, or probably is a lot more quicker at it. I think is probably the right term there. I think we can absolutely see some more avenues to open up, because right now we've seen that ball into Dessers a fair amount of times, but we don't see too much like slip down the sides example that I think are things that Fabio Silva could do. I'm a fan of McCausland. I really am. I was pleased that when the window shut, I guess everybody would like more attacking reinforcements, but I guess that sort of signaled to me that he's going to get another 15, 20 appearances this season, depending on how far we go in all competitions, and he'll be able to look back. We'll all be able to look back in the summer and say 20-year-old player got 40, 50 games for Rangers in a 6 month spell. Very rare for that to happen. Incredibly rare for an attacking player for that to happen at Rangers. So there's a decent body of evidence there to sit down in the summer and say, okay, do we just go with this now? And that's he's there, and we bring in some competition for him, or is it he's going to become a squad player and we bring in more proven quality ahead of him? But I'm quite happy that we've now got this 3 or 4 month window there to have that body of evidence building up. In terms of his numbers, I don't think there's a big deal there. There's a big deal there overall, because we need more numbers from everyone. But I think we can't just say that everyone must provide 15, 20 goals at the stage of their career that they're in. I think that's a little bit unfair. I've seen a few people comparing him to Sima, for example, who is 2 or 3 years older. 2 years older, I think, played a hell of a lot more football in a lot more leagues. He's played obviously Championship for a little bit. He's played Ligue 1 and he's played Slavia Prague European competition there. I don't think that's a fair barometer. Someone that went for 8 million when he was younger than McCausland is just now. So I think the fact that he's got whatever it is, 7 goals and assists combined in his first 25 appearances, I think is great. If he gets anywhere near 12 to 15 in his first season, I think that's great. There's really not many other Rangers attackers that are getting 20 plus goals and assists as regularly over the last couple of years that we need to be expecting a a boy in his first year to be aiming for that. So I think he's doing fine. There will be frustrating points, but yeah, hopefully we can see him improve as much as he has done in the last few months. And I think he'll be, like you said, if he's only at 30% just now, if we can get that even doubled by the end of the year, I think we'll have a really decent player. What about his relationship with Tavernier then? Like I said, I don't know how many games in a row that is that they've played together. It's interesting, just first of all, before we move on. Remember when Clement first came in and it was Cantwell that was playing out here and we were all chatting about what we'd seen. Obviously, McCausland wasn't here, it was Lammers. And it was one winger on that side, Sima, and then Cantwell. And we were thinking, is that how we're really going to go? I would love to get another winger in. And then all of a sudden, looking back, that Aris and Aberdeen drop points, the two draws there is probably quite a big moment, I think, for the manager right now. We'll see how big it is in a few months' time. But that was the point where he decided basically Lammers is not the guy. Cantwell's the guy for number 10. And then therefore a slot opened up here and McCausland gets his proper chance, I guess. So from that point there, I think it's 10 or 11 games ago, I think Cantwell's now at 5 or 6 goals. And obviously McCausland is picking up his numbers too. So I guess that's quite an important thing. That shows the manager's flexibility. It shows he was just sort of getting up to speed over those first few weeks and months, but he's then obviously identified that he would rather be a bit more aggressive, I guess, on the wings and have that opportunity there. So I guess that's a positive for the manager that he's now got Cantwell playing in what he thinks is his best position, and he's managed to come up with some wide options that are doing well.
Aye, and again, if you look at the profile, right, of what he's asking McCausland to do now, it's not really changed much from what he was asking Cantwell to do. And to be honest with you, when you look at it in theory, right, on a bit of paper, if you write down Cantwell's skill sets and what he's asking,
yeah,
right, and again, in theory, it 2 + 2 should equal 4, but it didn't, right? So at some point you need to, again, as a manager, you've got to figure out, like, does the boy believe in himself doing this? And if the answer is no, as it patently was, can McCausland do that job? So I like that he's been given the freedom to go and try it, right? What McCausland is a really good dribbler, right? And your point earlier about the goals and assists thing, listen, I think it's a really valid point, but if you're not going to get goals and assists out of Scott Wright, for example, is he as good a dribbler as McCausland? No. So you're going to get a different attacking pattern. Yeah. So if you want him to move inside and find people, he's going to be your boy there. So I think that's, been a good thing. On the flip side as well, is he a better defender than Cantwell? Is he more able to drop back and sit in a unit and basically do what he's told? Yes, he'll do that as well now. And again, what you want from McCausland now is that intuitively he picks it up rather than, okay, you're relying on all the boys to manage him and, coach him through a game defensively. So I think that's fair. But no, for sure, I think it's been definitely a good move. Because again, like we mentioned earlier, you're 2 for 1 now. You've got McCausland happy that he's playing. You've got Cantwell in his position he wants to play in. So you've served 2 things. You've now got 2 guys on side. And thankfully, we don't ever have to watch Sam Lammers play for Rangers again.
Yeah, that's an absolute bonus to that. Okay, just to finish off this tactical pad side then, Tavernier and McCausland, like I said, I was going on to that chat there, but it's at least 10 games, I think, now that they've pretty much played there. Obviously, it was a little bit before that. McCausland was coming in as well, but maybe wasn't as defined. What do we think about this? It feels like Tavernier has had about 10 partners on that right-hand side of the pitch, verging from Daniel Candeias to Kamar Roof to Joe Aribo to Hadji to Cantwell to Matondo. He's had so many of them. How do you think this relationship is working? Is it similar on the other side to what we think Yilmaz and Matondo are starting to become, or is it something completely different again?
It's a wee bit different, and I think where it's a wee bit different is we're used to seeing, certainly again, go back to the sort of narrow 10s, Tavernier dribbling the ball a lot. It's certainly carrying the ball in attack. Again, I'm not sure about you, mate, but I don't see much of that at all now. So I think he's more comfortable giving it to McCausland. I just think he makes more forward runs now, Tavernier. Again, I'm not sure if this is just a coaching thing, or he feels physically more capable of doing it, or he feels more comfortable going forward. But the amount of forward runs he's making certainly in the first half against Aberdeen, maybe it's just something I've noticed. I'd maybe need to check the data on it, but he just seems to make way more off the ball runs now than probably the last year. So it's, we've changed the reliance on him. I also think as well that wee pocket of space that's opening up for McCausland to dribble into. You can now have Lawrence make an overlap and run, right? You can, and Tavernier can sit inside the same way Yilmaz is. So there's some options there, right? There's some variety. And the beauty about Tavernier is it doesn't really matter where in the field he gets the ball. There's going to be quality. So if you give him an inch, was it the Barton game? Put a ball at the back post.
Yeah.
That Dessers missed, but he's got that quality wherever you give him it, right? So that's always going to be the thing for the opposition. Wherever you put Tavernier, there's going to be a player. Ergo, there's going to be a space either for him if he can find it, or for somebody else if he can use it.
No, definitely. I think that's a really interesting shout. So yeah, we'll see. That's a little bit on how we think the wing balance has been going. Obviously, Tavernier and McCausland, a little bit more information and evidence on that over the last couple of months, I guess. With Redvan and Matondo, it's very early days, and who knows if we see that combination more frequently going forward. I guess we can revisit it again later if there's anything new to talk about. But yeah, that was a quick look using Tactical Pad at how Rangers are using their left and right sides over the last few months.
That was a Heart and Hand production.